Tough talk around the globe and targets exploding from airborne strikes.
This is an important moment for our nations and for the world. This barbaric terrorist group, ISIL or Daesh, and its murderous ideology pose a serious threat to all of us. It cannot be tolerated, it must be destroyed, and we must do it together.
As tensions mount, so do concerns in the state of Florida. The former adjutant general weighs in on national security and what he's watching from afar. Plus, college football season gets ready to send two teams to what we've all known as the Gator Bowl. And the Symphony gears up for the holidays, along with the second year in leadership for music director Courtney Lewis. We'll cover those topics together on This Week in Jacksonville. And thank you for joining us this morning. And we're going to have a lighter side, looking at the Jack Sports Council events this holiday season. Plus, we've got that conversation with the Jacksonville Symphony conductor Courtney Lewis. First, President Obama says the United States and France stand together to rid the world of the terror group ISIS. Mr. Obama met with French President François Hollande at the White House this week. President Hollande is trying to put together an international coalition to go after ISIS. President Obama says the U.S. will be part of that alliance.
This is an important moment for our nations and for the world. This barbaric terrorist group, ISIL or Daesh, and its murderous ideology pose a serious threat to all of us. It cannot be tolerated, it must be destroyed, and we must do it together.
ISIS claimed responsibility for the attacks in Paris that killed at least 130 people, wounding many more. France has been stepping up its airstrikes against ISIS since then, and President Obama said the U.S. will intensify its current strategy, but he said it would be a mistake to send a large number of U.S. troops to Syria. Joining us this morning to talk about national security and foreign policy, Major General Emmett Titshaw, the former Adjutant General and leader of Florida's National Guard from 2010 through March of this year. General, I appreciate the time, and I appreciate giving some consideration to these things. It seems like ISIS and terror overseas still has to concern leaders of the state's military as well. What's your level of concern here?
Yes, first of all, Ken, thanks for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it. I think everyone is very concerned. Very similar feelings that we had right after 9/11 when we saw the Paris attacks take place last weekend. Didn't take place here. Took place over there, but I think everyone realizes that the reach of ISIS or ISIL is considerably longer than most people had imagined. With the shoot down of the Russian airliner, the attacks in Lebanon, and in the Paris attacks, they've really stepped up their game. And I think have gained the attention of the world now that they're going to have to be dealt with in a very firm and resolute manner.
This is always tough for a president. The commander-in-chief gets a lot of criticism. We've heard some of his comments saying, I don't think we should put more U.S. troops in Syria, or a large force there wouldn't be wise. But let me ask you, what's your opinion on that? Does it make sense to put more of our American troops, the people that you led, the Florida National Guard, does it make sense to send people over there, or do we need to stay a little bit more isolationist, as some people would say we should?
I think you could look at it a little bit like a football game. We were playing mostly defense up until the Paris attacks, and now I think the citizens of this nation are saying, look, we have to play offense. Do we need American boots on the ground, so to speak? And that's always the question. Maybe. We may have to do that at some point. Do we need them there right now? Maybe not. But we definitely need to have a stronger coalition presence. We need to have more action by that coalition, and we need to have the Sunni tribal leaders part of this ground game over there.
We talked earlier, I know that in 1970 is when you first volunteered. You said, I'll serve my country. And there was a war going on then. Over the course of these years, things have changed. It seems so much different. How do we combat these terror forces, whether it's Al-Qaeda or ISIS or someone else?
Well, I don't think we've quite figured it out yet. Yeah. We had a very challenging insurgency war that we fought in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and through the surge, we took a course correction, and President Bush initiated the surge that retook the country, so to speak, and the offensive for part of the aspect of the war. And so we can figure this out over time, and we can apply those military capabilities, if you will, that are necessary. But we have been taking a very, very measured approach, being very selective in our rules of engagement. I know the airstrikes that we've been doing over there. It seems interesting that we hand the target list to the French to go strike when we had not struck ourselves. And so I think our rules of engagement have been more constraining, if you will, than certainly the French.
Yeah, we've got video of some of the French airstrikes recently. As you mentioned, they've increased the offense, but this recent meeting between President Hollande and President Obama says, we are right there with you. What does that mean? I mean, typically America takes lead of a coalition.
Yes.
What does it mean here?
Well, first of all, we have a long history with the French,
yeah.
a good history.
Very
They
long
rescued
history.
us in the Revolutionary War, and
Right.
we rescued them in World War I and World War II. But President Hollande was after a grand coalition. He was hoping to travel to Russia after the meeting with President Obama
right.
and solicit support from Vladimir Putin to join President Obama and he in what he was calling a grand coalition to take final action against ISIS and destroy them. Yeah. Things that had maybe a small probability of success, but I think very little probability of success now that the Turks shot down the Russian aircraft.
Yeah, I want to talk about that and show you some of the video there. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Turkey's downing of a Russian warplane is, quote, a stab in the back. He says it'll have serious consequences for Russian-Turkish relations. On the other side, Turkey says it hit the plane after the plane repeatedly violated Turkey's airspace, ignored 10 warnings. We know one of the two pilots was killed in the air by fire from the ground. That's according to Russia's state-run news agency. Unclear if the second pilot survived. This seems like it just increases tension and maybe gives Russia another place to say, I'm going to do my own thing. Yes. Does it hurt coalition efforts?
Oh, it certainly does. There was more background to that incident than what's been reported, however, because for the last several weeks that the Russians have been flying out of Syria, they've been bombing mainly the Turkmen of northern Syria, which are connected ethnically to the Sunnis of Turkey. And so the Turks called in the Russian ambassador last week and said, this must stop. It must stop now. You know, bomb ISIS, not the coalition partners. And so Russia did not do that. So I think as soon as that Su-24 ventured across the line there of airspace into Turkish airspace, the Turks had very little patience.
They said no more.
They apparently offered a warning, several warnings, and then fired.
Yeah. Maybe wrap this up for me. We've got about a minute and a half left. But spell it out for Floridians. What is the danger to us here or to our National Guardsmen?
National Guardsmen are going to be wherever the country needs military action. We are no longer that strategic reserve we were 15 or 20 years ago in the Cold War. We are an operational force, and we're a total part of the total Army and total Air Force. So wherever the United States Army goes, the United States Air Force, the Guard will go along with them. And we have units in Florida with capabilities that could be called upon. For instance, our 125th Fighter Wing just got back from Operation Atlantic Resolve, where they were flying in Eastern Europe in response to the Russian aggression against the Ukraine.
And the 125th is there right by Jacksonville International Airport, is that right?
They are. And F-15Cs from active component have already been moved into Turkey at the Turks' request, so we could potentially see a rotation of Air National Guard F-15s in there over time. We also have an infantry brigade. We also have a special forces battalion that's called upon frequently. In fact, they'll be mobilizing here shortly for Southwest Asia.
All right. Well, we understand the concern. Appreciate your insights as something obviously we'll be looking at the rest of this year and into next year, it seems, maybe longer. General, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ken.
College football's regular season over for most teams with the conference championship games on the way. How that impacts the game Jacksonville hosts next in our interview with Rick Catlett of the Jack Sports Council. Stay with us.
A growing number of our clients, unfortunately, are victims of someone who was texting and driving. And in the event that you're involved in a crash, we can help you through that process.
Harrell and Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
Okay, guys, you need a big drive.
Big drive? You can score big savings at AutoNation's Sales Drive. Now go get them. Oh, and try yellow right halfback screen on 2.
Get in-store only Black Friday discounts up to 25% off. Plus, the first 1,000 sales include a 32-inch HD TV. Save on over 10,000 cars and trucks. Up to 25% savings and Sunday.
AutoNation, official sponsor of the AutoNation Cure Bowl.
Score big at AutoNation.
Be the change. Volunteer. Hands On Jacksonville has issued a challenge to make 2016 the year of the volunteer. The goal is to see 25,000 volunteer hours pledged by the end of this year. Here's how you can help. If you're already a volunteer, pledge your 2016 hours. If you're looking for volunteer opportunities, take the pledge and Hands On Jacksonville can show you how to get involved. Get started at handsonjacksonville.org.
Do you suffer from pain in your feet? How about your knees or your back? We can help with a personal fitting at the Good Feet store.
The pain was completely gone.
I wear them with all my shoes.
And I would recommend it to anybody.
Call us at the Good Feet store.
Want to see your favorite Channel 4 newscast when you're on the go? No problem. You can watch News 4 Jax live anytime, right on your desktop, phone, or tablet. Get clear viewing. Brought to you by Atlantic Eye Institute. Live your vision.
My name is Rose. Smoking caused my lung cancer. I was on chemo and radiation. They took part of my lung out, and they put this in me to drain the fluid. Every day I prayed that they would remove it. My tip is be careful what you wish for. That chest tube hurt a lot more coming out than it did going in.
Tobacco-Free Florida offers free nicotine replacement patches. Call 1-877-YOU-CAN now.
What does it mean to be the local station?
We're much more than just telling you what's going on in the community. We're telling you how it impacts you, how it affects you.
The people are depending on you for information. It's local. That's truly it. We don't say that because it's a cliche. We really are local.
We're here, and we're here for the viewer.
Tom Wills and Mary Bear. The 10 o'clock news on Channel 4. You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
Thanks for joining us this morning and staying with us. Rick Catlett is with us, the president and CEO of Jack Sports Council. I appreciate taking some time. We get to be outside a little bit instead of inside a studio. Outdoors is where so much of the stuff happens for you guys. Tell me what the Sports Council does, because it's more than just a bowl game, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We're charged from the city. We're a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, privately funded, and we're charged by the city to go out and recruit new sporting events to Jacksonville. Obviously, the bowl game is one of our events, and it's 71 years old this year. But it's so much fun going and talking to people about curling and women's basketball and soccer and lacrosse. We've got a bid getting ready to go in on lacrosse. So it's so much fun to get involved in all of sports in our town. And we're looking at events and venues. Obviously, a major renovation coming for the stadium that we're very much in support of. So a lot of really neat things happening in Jacksonville around and in sports.
Yeah, so that Florida-Georgia game is part of what you guys do as well. And I understand there's only one more year left on that, or are we renewed?
The city really runs that game, and we support the city any way we can. The reality is the ADs want to come back. The city wants them to come back. When you're at that point, it's usually easy to get a deal done. I would think in the next 4 to 5 months, you'll see the city announce a new deal.
The fans want them to come back.
Well, the fans definitely. If you were here in 95 and 96 when we were doing the stadium and had to go to Athens and Gainesville for that game, it wasn't nearly as much fun as having 42,000 people on each side.
On each side,
it's pretty cool.
So each side, who's going to be on each side when it comes to the bowl game this year? That's yet to be determined, right?
Well, we'll know next Sunday, as a matter of fact. We'll make an announcement sometime around 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon. We get an SEC team, so our home team will be an SEC team, and then we'll have either an ACC team or a Big Ten team on the other side. Right now, it's starting to look like a little bit like maybe Penn State on the Big Ten side, and hopefully Florida State on the ACC side. So SEC side, we're probably looking at the winner of Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and are the winner of Texas A&M, LSU. So 2 really good 9-3-ish teams. So we're pretty excited about our opportunities.
Of course, all depends on what happens in those conference championship games and where things shake out. College football is hard to predict.
It's going to change that Saturday. About midnight Saturday night, I can tell you who we're going to get.
College basketball also on the agenda. You said women's game coming here. 4 teams, right?
Right. We've got Florida and Mississippi State from the SEC playing 2 ACC teams, University of Central Florida and the University of South Florida. 4 o'clock, Mississippi State, USF, and at 7 o'clock, Florida's playing Central Florida. So starting to introduce that. It's in lieu of, in March, we will have the SEC Women's Basketball Championships. Probably in next October or November, we'll be announcing 2 Florida men's basketball games to be played here. The O'Connell Center is under renovation, so a lot of basketball. You know, that's one thing that nobody in the state really pays attention to from a city's perspective. You've got soccer, you've got Little League baseball at different cities around the state, but nobody really has honed in on basketball, and so I think we might be finding our niche in basketball.
So there's opportunity you're trying to step into.
Absolutely. You know, we had the NCAA tournament. The economic impact was about $20 million. So while it's not as big as a college game or the Jaguars or the Georgia-Florida game, it's certainly a big business.
$20 million is not anything to
shake your head at. That's right.
Exactly. And then off in the future, we've got a big game coming next year, Navy and Notre Dame.
Right. Very, very excited about doing that. You know, we have 50,000 naval personnel living in North Florida and Southeast Georgia, and have an opportunity to salute them and welcome them to this stadium and let them see, you know, the Naval Academy play. Probably America's team in Notre Dame. It's pretty exciting. It's not been out of the Southeast in a long, long time. So for us to get it, I think is a compliment to our stadium and to our people. And we're looking for a crowd of 60,000 to 65,000 people, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks on both sides who say, I can't wait for that game. I've seen some promotional videos. Will it be hard to fill up the stadium? Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, it actually will be. Interestingly enough, as you can well imagine, the Notre Dame really will bring people in from all over the Southeast. The local people will have an affinity to Navy, but there's 70,000 seats in this building. Right. That's a lot of tickets to sell, and the tickets are relatively reasonably the same price as the bowl tickets, $60 to $125. But I think Jacksonville will present itself in a very first-class manner. It's the week after the Georgia-Florida game, by the way, so we'll have that game on nationally televised, and then we'll follow that up with the Navy-Notre Dame nationally televised, and it's the same weekend as the Sea and Sky, so the Blue Angels will be doing the flyover. So we got a lot of great plans going with our partner in the city of Jacksonville and the United States Navy. We're excited.
Courtney Lewis enjoying his River City gig for a second year now. The hip conductor of the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra coming up next.
Wake up! Come on! Why are you sleeping? Come on! What time is it? It's go time! Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go!
I feel like I went to bed an hour ago. I'll make the cocoa.
Get a great offer on the car of your grown-up dreams at the Mercedes-Benz Winter Event.
It's the look on their faces that makes it all worthwhile.
But hurry, these offers end soon.
I'm Melvin from AARP's News You Can Use radio show here in Jacksonville.
And I'm Nancy, a proud member of AARP from Jacksonville.
We're at the St. John to tell you about all the real possibilities that AARP brings to our community.
We're connecting caregivers and families to resources and offering fun, free movie screenings. So get to know us.
And see all the real possibilities at aarp.org/Jacksonville.
This is Pastor R.J. Washington of the Titus Harvest Dome. Join us on Channel 4 every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have a God time. Yes.
Okay, guys, need a big drive.
Big drive? You can score big savings at AutoNation's sales drive. Now go get them. Oh, and try a yellow right halfback screen on 2.
Get in-store only Black Friday discounts up to 25% off. Plus, the first 1,000 sales include a 32-inch HD TV. Save on over 10,000 cars and trucks. Up to 25% savings and Sunday.
AutoNation, official sponsor of the AutoNation Cure Bowl.
Score big at AutoNation.
Beep, beep. Support the Channel 4 toy drive for the Children's Christmas Party of Jacksonville. Your generous donation can help a child experience the joy of the holiday season. On December 3rd, we are collecting new, unwrapped toys at the Channel 4 studios. Our address is 4 Broadcast Place, 32207.
The painting bought for $15. Could it actually be a Picasso? It was hidden in an old sewing machine for decades. Could it be worth $13 million? Next, Inside Edition.
Monday at 7:30 on Channel 4.
Well, the Black Friday frenzy is over. We're looking ahead to Cyber Monday now.
We look at the best deals for kids, what Consumer Reports reveals about tablets and why they could actually help out your kids.
And with Thanksgiving in the books, you know, many of you are probably looking to shed a few pounds, work off some of that food you had.
And those diets can be very expensive. The 3 best plans for your health and your diet coming up on Monday.
The Morning Show on Channel 4 makes mornings happen.
If you've seen my bio, you know I love music. Played in several groups in college and love the symphony. The Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra music director Courtney Lewis is a busy man, an interesting man. Our friend Bruce Hamilton visited with him recently about the holidays ahead and concerts coming up in the new year.
Thanks, Kent. So, Courtney, while everybody's focusing on the holidays, you're focusing on the Masterworks concert series that's coming up in January, and we are talking some symphonic blockbusters here.
We have 2 sets of Masterworks in January. On January 7th, 8th and 9th, I'm going to be conducting Debussy's masterpiece La Mer, which is an orchestral depiction of the sea. There are 3 movements that talk about the sun rising over the sea, the play of the wind and the waves, and from dusk to dawn on the sea when a storm happens. And in those concerts, we're also featuring a really fantastic German cellist called Nicholas Altstadt, who I've worked with in Boston. And we're really excited about him coming to the Jacksonville Symphony.
Is your dream as music director to actually transport people through music and have them feel that emotion in those scenes you were just talking about?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Debussy was trying to draw pictures in sound of these experiences on the sea. And there are some parts of that piece when you can actually imagine seeing a wave rise in front of you because the music is so powerful.
Of the Masterworks that you're featuring this year, which stirs your soul the most?
That one is pretty exciting, but at the end of January, we have a very spiritual concert on January 29th, 30th, and 31st. We'll be performing Mozart's Great Mass in C minor. And this is a piece that Mozart wrote after his wife was recovering from illness. And it's an enormous piece for 4 soloists, a double chorus, and full orchestra. And there's something very powerful about this music that really reinvigorates your will to enjoy life and to imagine something bigger than us.
When you talk about the masters, you talk about Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. If you could transport yourself back in time and sit down with just one of the masters, talk about music, talk about life, talk about experience, who would it be?
I think for me it would be Beethoven. I mean, his music is so... There's none of his music that I don't love. And he occupied such an interesting juncture point in the history of music when composers were moving away from basically being servants in courts to being individuals. And there's something that's so modern about his music that still appeals to us today, this quest for freedom and for justice and for individuality in music.
What would be the most pressing question you'd like to ask?
I think something about how he actually composed, because we can trace the way Beethoven wrote music because he wrote from sketches that he then worked through and reorganized. And it would be fascinating to see the very first germ cell of an idea before he'd worked at it.
I know you're not part and parcel of the holiday traditions which are happening with the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra, but if you don't mind me getting personal, you grew up in Northern Ireland. Your favorite holiday experiences, do they tie to music? Do they not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, Christmas was all about singing in a choir. And I sang the Messiah every year from when I was, goodness, 7 until 20. So we have a wonderful performance of Messiah on December 19th, which our wonderful assistant conductor, Nathan Aspinall, will be conducting. And I would really recommend going to that. We also have Complete Nutcracker being performed on 3 nights. That's on December 17th, 18th, and 19th. And that's a really wonderful thing to go and see as well.
I kind of transported you back in time a bit and asked who you'd like to most interview. If you were in the future, say 100, 200 years from now, who do you think the people that we see as modern-day masters today might be looked at historically in the world of music and have made an impression?
Well, there are many composers writing new music today, and it's always very difficult to know who will appeal in the future. In Mozart's time, in Beethoven's time, there were many other composers being played who aren't anymore. But some of my favorite composers today, John Adams, Thomas Adès, composers that we're playing this season, Esa-Pekka Salonen, I think that they've already had to sort of succeed where others have dropped off in their own time. And there's something about all three of those composers' music that really speaks to our time. And that's about as much as you can ask. So I would hope that they'd still be played.
I know one of your priorities as music director is to bring an appreciation to the audience here in Jacksonville. Do you think people really understand that the classics have great roots in today's music, regardless of the genre?
I think it's something that people struggle with. And for some reason, music presents a block. You know, we would be appalled if we went to an art gallery and there was nothing from the last 20 years. But for some reason with music, we apply a different set of standards. There's nothing different about the music of today from the music of Beethoven or Bach or Handel. It's just that it's a different vocabulary, and it's more complicated and more neurotic and less certain, just the way life is today compared to in the 18th or 19th century. That's something wonderful and something to be celebrated because it gives us a picture of our own time, and it helps us to understand what it's like to be a human living today.
You talked about the music being neurotic. Some of the masters were neurotic, too, in their own way. Courtney Lewis, thanks for being here on This Week in Jacksonville.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you. Happy holidays. Kent?
Yeah, Mr. Lewis tells me that he said the wrong dates for the Nutcracker, so let me give you the correct ones. It starts December 18th, not the 17th, and it runs the 19th with 2 shows there, 2 p.m. and 8 p.m., then a finale on the 20th. All of these are at the Times Union Center. The Duval County School District now under a federal civil rights investigation to see if it's obeying the law. The Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights wants to know if African American and Hispanic students are being treated equally. The school superintendent is not happy about it. Department of Education sent a letter to Congresswoman Corrine Brown advising her that the Duval County school system must complete a compliance review. School Superintendent Nikolai Vitti tells News4Jax that he suspects Congresswoman Brown initiated this review for political reasons, and Brown is denying she had anything to do with it. The letter explains that the Office for Civil Rights is specifically looking into teacher equity and instructional leadership. That means they want to be sure there's a diverse teaching staff of educators from different backgrounds. It's unclear if there was a specific complaint that prompted this compliance review, but the letter indicates that the department periodically conducts these investigations. Dr. Vitti says the civil rights investigation is upsetting and suspicious because the notification came directly from the Congresswoman Brown's office. He calls this compliance review a huge waste of taxpayer money, says the Congresswoman either directly or indirectly ordered that investigation for political reasons. Thanks for joining us on This Week in Jacksonville.
At News4Jax, we're always covering the news, even when we're not on TV. Stay informed, on the go, and online at news4jax.com.